RoxKnits podcast. My name is Corey Eichelberger and I live in Victoria, Minnesota, which is a southwest suburb of the Twin Cities. Today I've got a little bit special, exciting surprise for you. As you can see, I'm going to be sharing the 8 patterns that are going to be coming out in my new ebook in September of 2020. I have been working on this since the first of the year. It started out just kind of as a slow roll, and then once we went on lockdown, I decided to go all in and spend all my days doing design work. What I'm wearing today is actually the tunic sweater that started the entire thing. I am standing because there's so much to show you, so many samples that I just didn't know how I was going to do it if I sat down. So I'm going to try this today. But I designed this sweater, started a year ago when my husband and I went up north. I had the design in my head for the 4 previous years and had never gotten around because Megan and I wrote the Minnesota 52 book, and then that came out and we did a lot of advertising and selling of that, and then I got into doing some other design work, and this kind of sat on the back burner. It is not a sweater for everyone because it is fully worded all the way down. It does go to mid-thigh on me. But it is a super fun sweater to wear to a knitting event. And so having it at Rhinebeck of 2019 was just a joy. I did knit a matching skirt for my friend Amber, the yarn hoarder, and she didn't know she was receiving it, and I picked pinks and purples because pinks are her favorite, and she had clothing along that matched it, so we ended up wearing them in tandem, and it just made it even more fun. On the sleeve of the sweater, it does say sleeve on either side. The problem with designing a sweater like this or any of these items is that when you go to size them, the words don't always fit. So you can't have a half a word on a sweater. You don't want it to stay stocka and then stop. So making this sweater for a variety of sizes was going to be super difficult and challenging to kind of try to figure out. And I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole with the thoughts that there aren't a whole lot of people that want to wear this. And we're on lockdown right now, so people aren't even going to events like, Vogue Knitting Live or Stitches or some of the other big things that happen around the country. All my teaching has gotten canceled, so I thought it probably makes more sense to do a lot of designs that have words on them, but then let people kind of make them their own. So the book includes 8 patterns: a cowl, a hat, a sweater, a skirt, a poncho, a pillow, a tote bag, and a lanyard. And I'm going to go through all of those for you today. I also wrote 10 short little poem-like stories in the book, musings, as we say, things to make you laugh. So even if you decide that you wouldn't knit a lot of the things in the book, you will get a set of stories. And then there are some extras that are surprises in the book. We have a couple of extra things that we've included to try to give the book some more value for folks. I will say right here up front that if you haven't signed up for my newsletter, you need to do that quickly, because when this goes live, the email will go out with the discount code for the ebook, and so you'll want to get that. Otherwise, it will be for sale on Ravelry. It will be in my Etsy store. All the patterns will be for sale individually, but it will be a better deal if you buy the ebook, because I'm going to highly discount the entire book. I just want people to have the whole thing and not just say, well, only knit one, so I'm just going to buy one pattern. Okay? So let's get started with the first design. The first thing that I decided to design was a hat. Here is the version that I chose. On any of the designs that have 3 words, I chose the most popular: knit, purl, and yarn. I have a small, I have a medium, which actually matches my sweater exactly because I used the leftovers. And this happens to be Jill Draper Make Stuff Sport Weight. It's called Mohonk, and she has lovely colors. However, her yarn comes in giant skeins, so the put-ups are many, many, many yards, and therefore it's slightly, well, it's a bit more expensive. So I would not recommend for most people to go out and purchase the little bits of yarn that you're going to need for some of these in big skeins of yarn. So I will talk about that when I get to some of the other designs, but I had this with lots left over, so then I went ahead and knit some other items with the leftovers. But if you have scrap yarn, you're going to see that a lot of these can really just take scraps. So here are the decreases on that crown. Makes a nice little toque, and knit, purl, and yarn in the 3 sizes. Mostly what I did is just spaced things out a little bit more. This is the largest one. So if you've got a ton of hair, or if you're someone with a large head, this is the largest version. And this is also done in the leftovers of the Jill Draper yarn, and this is Amber's skirt colors. So I used those for that first design when I was just kind of dipping my toe in the water and trying to decide if this could actually be an ebook. The second thing that I designed was a cowl. Again, 2 sizes, nothing too difficult to do, and I used the same words: knit, purl, and yarn. And this is knit in worsted weight, and I used brown sheep nature spun worsted, which has a beautiful price point. So you can actually get most of these designs done at a fairly inexpensive price. This is the small cowl, the smaller version. I did Corey's 2-color cast on the bottom, just super decorative and Barber Poli. And then I designed a cast off that matches for the top, a 2-color cast off. So I had only ever used the cast on before because I was doing hats, and I had never done a cast off, bind off. So I wanted to have a bind off that would coordinate with this. So I worked on it quite a bit, and I'm putting up a tutorial which will go up about the time that this goes live. So if you get another notification that RoxKnits put up a video, it's going to be the tutorial for the bind off. And here is, I think, what's going to be a lot of people's favorite colorway is the yellow and gray, that kind of grello thing going on. There are little lice stitch right here, knit one, knit one, knit one, knit one, in alternating colors. And those are always optional, so if you want your hat to be shorter or your cowl to be shorter, you can leave out that, or you can add in another one if you need it to be taller, and all of that is explained in the book. But it makes it really easy if you alternate in the 2 colors here to go back and forth, as opposed to doing all of the stripes in different colors, right? This gets real crazy, whereas the 2-color versions where you alternate red with gold, gold with red, red with gold, don't get quite so crazy. But this is the prototype for the cowl, and this is done in Malabrigo Rios, and I did not alternate. I did pink on blue for the whole thing. So that's also an option for people. And this is my, still on the needles because this is the one I used to do the video tutorial. So, but of course Malabrigo Rios looks bold and bright and lovely in this. So this was the original prototype that I was trying to decide whether or not it should have corrugated ribbing, and I decided that it should. So it does. The hats do not. The hats do not have corrugated ribbing, although you could do corrugated. I did twisted ribbing on the hats and then corrugated on the cowl. Okay, I love this next design, and I hope you all want to make it as well. Here is the pillow. So it has words from top to bottom. You cast on the bottom, and then you knit and purl and love yarn and yarn over knit two together and SSK and ribbing, increase and decrease, and then you bind off at the top. This is also done in the brown sheep nature spun in the worsted weight. We did a neutral palette because I think this would go in most people's houses and not be too much. You can certainly go wild and crazy if you have a knitting or sitting room somewhere you spend all your time knitting. I think everyone needs this pillow. It uses a 20 by 20 pillow form, and it turns out quite big. It is, you have to get gauge in order for this to fit. And I did have a couple of knitters who felt like theirs was a little bit off. They had trouble getting row gauge, and then a couple of them didn't. So we left the pattern as is, but I did have someone felt theirs slightly to make it a little bit smaller to fit a little smaller pillow form. So there is the giant fun pillow, which I think done in Corey colors, like my sweater, would just be wild, but done in this beautiful neutral is really fun. So a 20 by 20 pillow is a good size pillow, but it's kind of a standard couch pillow. So some of you may have old pillows at home that you could do the covering for. You could just cover a pillow you already have. One of the test knitters put a zipper in the top, so it was removable. She chose to do that. Otherwise, it's just stitched together. This entire pillow is cast on provisionally, if you choose, knit in a tube, and then seamed at the top and bottom, unpicking that provisional cast on, or you can cast on normally and just stitch together, kind of with a mattress stitch, the top and the bottom. Easy enough to do. After pillow comes poncho, and this is the poncho in all its glory, which if I were going to Rhinebeck this fall in October, this is what I would be wearing. I just think it's so fun. Again, done in worsted weight. I have about half the projects are done in worsted, so the words are bold, and half the projects are done in sport weight, so the words aren't quite as big. And we did it in 2 iterations. We did blues and greens, so I'm going to hold up the other one so you can kind of see the difference. I have a small and a medium version. They were both knit by sample knitters for me, and the numbers go, it is worked from the top down, and then you just bind off, and so you can try it on as you go and see how long you want to make it. It does hit most people just at the wrist, so it would be a traditional poncho shape, and it comes with 2 different necklines, a crew neck or a turtleneck. Both of these have the turtleneck on them. I'm a turtleneck lover. I love to cozy up. To me, this would be the best winter blanket to knit in when you were in your pajamas sitting on the couch. You just pull it on over you and you can knit away, and it would just be lovely, and you would be surrounded in warmth. But I can understand that some people wouldn't want that folded over turtleneck, so I did write the instructions to do just a small crew neck at the top of the poncho. If you want to do a poncho and not have words on the whole thing, that's your prerogative. You can put 1 word, you can put 2 words, you can put only a couple words at the bottom, maybe knit and purl only around the bottom, and make all the rest of this solid. So there are lots of ways to kind of make the projects your own, and they don't have to be screaming I'm a knitter everywhere you go. But I really wish Rhinebeck were happening this year, because I think we would see lots of these. And we used the palette from Brown Sheep specifically because they have a huge colorway range in each color. So they have lots of greens and they have lots of blues, lights and darks, and that's really what you want to do, is put the light on the dark and then put the dark on the light in order to make your words kind of stand out. I have not done one where the colors were really close together, but I think that would be fun too, where you would kind of have to look a little harder to see, because the 2 colors that someone used are very close in tone or hue, so that would be fun. So that's the poncho, and it comes in 3 sizes, so it goes up to a pretty big bust size. It doesn't have to fit you, it just has to go over whatever you're wearing, but I did make it definitely big enough so that it could go over a sweater if you were wearing, or a light jacket, something underneath what you had on. Here comes Amber's skirt, but this one isn't going to be in pinks. This is Corey's skirt. So this is a pink, purple and blue skirt. And so it's solid at the top, where most of us would wear a shirt out over the top of this. So I thought, why would we bother to knit words up there? And it has an elastic waistband that's folded over. So you knit ribbing for several inches, and then you just fold it over and tack it down. I tacked mine down just by stitching it, but you could do a provisional cast on and then do a 3 needle knit together to join that, and that is written in the pattern if that was what you would prefer. The sizing on this is not difficult because you put your elastic in later. So if your skirt's a little big or a little tight, it's okay. Your elastic's going to help with that just a slight bit. And I gave waist and hip sizes at all increments all the way down. So if you measure yourself around your waist and then around your hips and around your hiney, you can go from a small waisted to a bigger hipped, or you can go for a big waisted straight down to a same hipped, and it's all written in the pattern for sizing of that. You do all, again, have to get gauge in order for things to fit well, but this one is done in sport weight yarn. So the words aren't quite as big. I'm not sure that that's really going to show in the camera as well, but they're a little smaller. The whole density of the fabric is just a little smaller. So if you did not see Amber's at Rhinebeck, she kept hers after the photo shoot, and these were the colors that I kind of did Amber's in. The pinks, the purples, the grays. The palette was much more neutral, and so things weren't quite as screaming in hers, and you will see pictures of that on the pattern page. Then for the sweater, I decided that the sweater should probably only have 3 words. You can put any words you want on the sweater because I'm providing an alphabet of all the letters charted so that you can insert words that you might like. If you have a nickname or a Ravelry name and you're going to an event, you could use the charts to insert your own words into the yoke of the sweater or any of the items and just have that be a part of it. Given instructions for how to do that, but here is the small sweater with knit, purl, and yarn. This is a top-down yoke with short sleeves. You can't put words around the sleeves anyway, so your sleeves would have to be solid because the words don't fit around. The circumference is too small, so you might get purl and then PU, which you don't want. Or you might get stockinette. So it just does not work to put the words around the sleeve, but if you want to put the word sleeve on the sleeve like I did, you can do that because I provided that as one of the charts in the book. Some of the charts are worked upside down because you're working from the top down. Other of the charts are worked right side up because you're working from the bottom up. So if you're in the ebook and some of the charts are upside down, you might think to yourself, that's just to indicate to you that, oh, yes, you are knitting them, the K's, from the other direction. I will say, this is the easiest kind of color work knitting you can do. Almost all the lines are straight and vertical, and so once you get the setup row done, you know where the letters are going from them. Like, you know that on top of the T, you're going to just continue to knit more contrast color on the top of that T before you get to the top of it. I would say that for color work, it's probably one of the easier ways to kind of enter into color work because you're not doing flowers with round edges or pretty designs and zigzags and waves and things that are harder to follow with your eye. When you do the first row of the chart, then you kind of have it down. You're like, okay, this is the Y, this is the A, this is the R, this is the N, and I know what goes on top. I did put that little speckled mark, the lice, in between these. You could add more on the way down if you chose to. You could do lice for your entire body of your sweater. And this is the small sample that we used. I had 3 models in the book. Thank heaven for Amber Lindman. She was a photographer in her former life. and she did weddings and senior portraits mostly, but I asked her if she would do my high-ho shawl this spring because I didn't have a way to get together with my photographer who had moved to New York City, or my model, and we probably shouldn't have gotten together anyway because we weren't in the same bubble. So I just said, if I send you the shawl, would Heidi hold it up? And Heidi did a phenomenal job, and many of you bought the high-ho shawl. But then I had to turn around and say, will you do all the photography for my entire ebook? And she said, sure. But then she also said, boy, that's a whole lot of Heidi modeling over and over again. Maybe we should try to find someone else to model with her. And I said, that would be awesome. And Amber's niece lives in the town where Amber and her husband have their printing company, and she works for their printing company. And her best friend is often with her, and they eat with Amber's family quite regularly, so there wasn't a huge concern about them getting together. So Bianca and Hannah were asked for the first time ever to model, and for the first time ever to model knitwear in a park in front of people, and they said sure, that they would help Amber out by doing that, and I am so thankful. They're all beautiful young women who bailed me out when I didn't have a different way to do it, and I really wanted the items to be shown on bodies instead of just laying them in the grass or on a piece of floor and taking the pictures. It just wouldn't have been the same. So a couple weeks ago on a Sunday morning, they all met and tried everything on and took amazing pictures. This is the sweater that's in my size, and I used more Corey colors with the orange, as you can see. And so I did the same kind of increases in the yoke as originally in this sweater. I just stopped after the third word. I had to do a little tweaking of the sizes to make everything work, to get it all fitted into the yoke for everyone, but you can add all the words all the way down. I took the numbers from the sweater pattern and then made charts to try to fit into those numbers for all of the sizes, so that if you really want to try to put words all the way down, you could certainly do that. It may take a little tweaking because you may have to leave 5 spaces between some words on a certain part of the body, and 3 spaces or 7 spaces. That is all you have to do to figure out what will work into the numbers that you're working with. So it's not super hard. You just have to be willing to sit down with paper and pencil and look at your numbers and see which chart fits best. And if the chart is 10 stitches wide and you have 300 stitches on the needles, then you know that it will fit in there evenly. And if it doesn't, then you just have to figure out how many spaces. You can also put more spaces between the letters to make it work. It's just a little bit of figuring and math. Then we have the lanyard. It's in a bag here because I had a funny story to tell about these lanyards. But I think this is hopefully the item that most people will say, I will knit that. Like that's gonna be a fun thing to have. The lanyard is just basically a strip of knitting, knit on one side and purl on the other, and folded and 3 needle bound off together. I did not knit this doing double knitting. I just folded it in half. You can do one in an evening. There are 3 sizes. So there's a small, there is a medium, and there is a large. Corey, why would I want a knit and purl lanyard? Why am I knitting a necklace? Because what do you carry your keys on? A lanyard, right? So you put all your little knitting things on here and it becomes the thing that you take to knit group. So you attach an O-ring, a D-ring through the knitting at the edge, and then you purchase one that can screw and unscrew, and you hang a piece of tape measure from a broken tape measure that you've just cut off, and a chibi needle, and a safety pin, and some stitch markers, and a crochet hook. And you can just throw it in your bag. It can always be there. When you get to knitting, you can take it out of your bag and put it on, and none of your stuff will end up under the floor, under the table on the floor at Perkins, which is where we always left our stitch markers. So here's the medium size. And I have a row counter and a tiny little scissors and a piece of tape measure and some stitch markers. And so I can just have that all around my neck while I'm sitting at knitting. Wherever I am, in any group, at a convention, I sit down for a few minutes, I have my lanyard on, I have all my little things that I can use, and then when I get up to leave, I can just take it off and throw it in my bag, and nothing's going to be lost because it's all attached to this little hook. And here is the longest one, so if you want one that's even longer, or if you're bigger busted, I didn't want that short one to be sitting up too high on someone who's bigger busted, so I did this one. This one actually has a D-ring. I have a little scissors. I have a bone stitch marker. I have a donut. I have one of Jelby's little felted ball stitch markers with the sheep on it. And they all come off and on quite easily by just unscrewing the D-ring and screwing it back on, but I can also use the tape measure on here. I can use the scissors attached to this. I don't have to take it off. They can be kind of permanent. So 3 sizes, I'll hold them all up. These will make the best gifts for all your knitting friends. Fun to knit, gives you something to do, you follow the chart. You get really good at knitting knit and purl if you do all the projects in this book, because knit and purl and yarn is on a lot of this stuff. So I have knit and purl pretty much memorized the chart because I knit them so many times, but I really think this is a fun way, and you could absolutely chart your own name from the charts in the book and put your own name. You could put your Ravelry name on here. You could also leave the words off. If you didn't want to knit and purl, you can knit yourself a strap. You cast on in the round, knit up, fold it over, bind. I provisionally cast on, but you do not have to. You can just seam it together if you don't have live stitches on one side when you're done. It's easy enough to just seam that together. I did 3 needle lined off, but you wouldn't have to. And you've got, so I bought a package of these kind of different sizes of rings to see which I like the best, and I purchased them on Amazon, and I have a link in the pattern for the ones that I found. I also found some really fun more O-shaped ones that unscrewed as well. So you can also take apart a key ring you have at home if that works better for you. I mean, you don't have to go out and buy a package of these for $9.99. I got 4 or 5 of them, I don't remember. And they don't have to be this big. You can make them smaller. You can hang many more items on your hook, whatever you choose to. You could hang a full tape measure on it if you wanted. It's really, none of this is too heavy. It's all quite loose, and I think personally that this will be one of the things that people will enjoy having and knitting afterwards. Now let me show you my mistake. I cast on the largest size, provisionally cast on, and started knitting away. And I have hundreds of skeins of yarn for this project in my house. I have massive blues, massive greens, all the reds and oranges and yellows. I have the purples and the pinks. And I accidentally grabbed the worsted weight yarn because all of these are knit with sport weight yarn. And I used Brown Sheep Nature Spun Sport, which comes in 50-gram balls. So it's very reasonable, $6, and you could get a number of lanyards out of your 2 skeins of yarn. But I cast it on in worsted. So I have a giant, and I got almost halfway before I realized I had done it wrong. And I thought, oh, I don't want to rip that out. That stinks. I can't believe I did it in worsted weight. And it was turning out so big. I thought, well, I'm going to finish it. So I did, and I used RoxKnits. I charted, as you can do, using the letters in the charting in the back, at the back of the ebook. You can make your own Ravelry name. And so if I ever have to go somewhere where I need to be known, it's not terrible that it's that big. It's just not what I intended at all. So I can certainly wear it around my neck if I choose to. It's just kind of a bigger piece than I expected, and I threw it in the corner for quite a while. And then once all the patterns were done, I went back and decided to finish this up. And boy, I will tell you that my sample knitters rocked this ebook test. The test knitters and the sample knitters yarn choices are amazing. So you have to go to Ravelry and look at their projects because it will give you an indication of colors that you might like to use in your projects because you're really partial to purples and someone did the entire tote bag in purples. I did the entire tote bag in Cory colors. So here's the tote bag. This is bind off at the bottom and knit 2, cast on, yarn over, knit 2 together, yarn over, or yarn, purl, and knit at the top. The bag is lined. I had a woman cut some canvas to my dimensions. If you're not a sewer, I contacted Anne of the Silver Shed USA on Etsy, who is Amy of the Stockinette Zombies' mother, who makes project bags that I love, and asked her if she would be willing to sew linings for people who knit a tote bag but don't have access to a sewing machine or can't sew. And she said yes, she will absolutely. You could pick your fabric that you want to use for the inside of your tote bag. You would measure, the bottom of your tote bag and the sides, send that to her, and then she would sew up your lining, send it back to you, and then you would just stitch it in by hand, which is what I did. I had mine sewn, not by her, because I didn't think of it until afterwards. I was like, well, if I had to have mine sewn, somebody else is going to have theirs sewn. And so then I hand stitched it around the top, and it's not stitched at the bottom. And then I purchased leather handles from a company that is linked in the pattern, who also sends you along the waxed thread and the buttons to stitch them on with. Better, easier to show you on this side. There you go. Okay, so that's waxed thread, and you just stitch those on the outside. However, if you don't want to purchase the leather handles, it's a site that has all different colors, all different lengths, all different widths. You can knit handles in garter stitch and then felt them a little bit in your washing machine, and so that they don't stretch out too much. And I gave instructions for how to do that in the pattern. So you could absolutely knit your entire bag and not purchase the handles. You could take handles off a different bag that you have and sew them on. That's certainly an option. But then, in order to provide some structure, because the bottom of the bag is garter stitch and it's knit with the yarn held double, so you knit a rectangle, and then you pick up along the 4 sides and knit in the round all the way up. So fairly easy construction, but not a super stand-up bag without a lining in it. Pretty soft. And this is a large bag. I carry large knitting bags. I like a big Vera Bradley type tote. When I go places, I want to be able to put 2 or 3 projects in my bag. So this is a large bag. You could make it shorter, absolutely, by leaving off a word or 2. It could be much shorter. But in order to have it really stand up for me, I purchased an insert. So this is a purse insert that you can buy to put in any bag you have. Then you have your wallet and your makeup and your car keys, and it's got all kinds of pockets. And then you can take it out of one purse and put it in another purse, and they have different sizes of these. I got this one on Amazon. I bought it because it was orange felt. It's a little fancier than I need it to be. It does have number of pockets in it, and then it has a divider piece that you can put in the middle that's got some Velcro, but I took that out because I wouldn't want the Velcro by my yarn. This is the soft side of the Velcro, so it doesn't hurt anything. But I also put a link for where to find the bag liner on Amazon as well. I covered a piece of foam core to put in the bottom of the bag. So if you don't want to purchase a liner, you can just cover a piece of plywood or foam core or a couple of pieces of cardboard box with your fabric that you use for your liner, and then put that in the bottom. It does fold. This one's bent a little bit already because, well, it's been mailed back and forth across the country. But if you put that in the bottom and measure across the bottom of your rectangle, that will also provide for some stability on the bottom of the bag. I will put a picture in here of Heidi and Bianca holding the bag so you can kind of get the dimensions for how big it is on the body. I'm so tickled that it's done and that you can see it, what I've been working on. I sometimes go into the office at 10 in the morning and don't come out until 10 at night. It has been a huge undertaking to write all of this and get it accurate. I thank heavens for my tech editor, Jean. I absolutely could not have done it without her and Amber and Stacy. Oh, Stacy, the sample knitter of the sweaters. When I reached August and I did not think I could finish knitting the sweaters because of my thumbs, I reached out to Stacy and she never says no. And she's the fastest knitter I know. And so she finished up, she knit the small and she finished the whole body on the one that's my size to get them done for the photo shoot, which is just amazing. The whole thing is all called Knitwords. Knitwords, 8 patterns that celebrate the knitter, and done in sport weight and worsted weight, brown sheep, pretty much exclusively nature spun. But any sport or any worsted you have. I'm gonna show you a project that I made, gosh, 15 years ago, back when felting was in its heyday. And I was teaching felting classes at the local yarn stores when I lived in Virginia. And I tell a story about this bag, and there's a picture in the book, but I'm going to show you the bag so that you can have a little sneak peek of what the story is referring to. So this is a jangle button bag, and I wanted the buttons at the top of this bag to jangle and hang off. And so I knit in, look at, these are still some of my favorite colors: orange, raspberry, gold, and lime or turquoise. So funny, all these years later I'm still and then I did knitted handles, and I carried this for quite a while, and then I've refelted it, but I did the handles half and half in colors. I've always been this wild and crazy, but it's the same concept: garter stitch bottom, pick up around, knit your way up. And the story in the book is called Jangle Button Bag, so you can go out and read that one and see what it's all about. I have a giveaway. I have a huge giveaway. I have lots of leftover yarn from the ebook project. I want to share some of the yarn that I have left over. I have kept all the partial skeins in my stash, which is still a lot. And I have bags of full skeins that we did not use or we had extras of, so that I'm going to give them away. I'm going to quick show them. So I have a neutral palette for one of the items. I have reds and golds and oranges and purples and pinks, full skeins left over. Those are 50-gram skeins because that's the sport. I have a green, green, green set of 5 skeins. And I have a purple, 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 red, and a random gold, but I think you could make this work, set of 5 skeins. So I'm going to do a giveaway. And I'm going to do it on Ravelry and YouTube. So if you can go to Ravelry, then go over to the Ravelry group and put your name in, and I will list the colors that I have available, and then I will draw a name from each until I have someone in each color palette. So it'll say put green or all of them. You don't care what color you get because you like all color, or you want the neutral one, and if you can't have the neutral one, then you wouldn't knit with the other ones. So don't, you know, necessarily take a color that you would never knit with, because that's no fun. But then I will do a drawing. I will just get in touch with people. So you're going to have about I'm going to say a week until the next podcast goes up live, roughly, depending, it's all dependent on this hand surgery, and then I will just draw. So if you are watching this one in the first few days after it goes live, then you can go over to Ravelry and I will gift and send out some of the yarn that is used in the ebook. It'll be either worsted weight or sport weight. The Meaningful Stitch is a new podcast by Amy Palko from Edinburgh, and she was episode 1 when I watched, which had been about a week and maybe 10 days ago. Then Hilo Stitch is with Kristen, and I am going to be working with Kristen to be getting some of my patterns translated to Spanish. I've been asked by one person to do one pattern, and she offered, and she's going to make it a business. So that's mediaperuana. I wish I could say it with the lovely accent that she says it with. But I follow her on Instagram, and she put a notice out that she was doing this transcribing of knitting patterns, and I got in touch. And then I realized that she has a Patreon and she has a podcast called Hilo Stitch, H-I-L-O and Stitch, which means yarn and stitch in Spanish, maybe? Yeah, something like that. A podcast watcher reached out and asked if I watched Caught in the Wool, and that is Sam of Bumblebee Yarns. And she lives on a farm, has some children who she is homeschooling, or are home from school right now, and she sits outside under a tree, did the one I watched, Caught in the Wool. And I knew Bumblebee Yarns, I just didn't know she had a podcast. And then Woolly Mammoth Fiber Company, WMFC, and that is Emma, and she's on episode 27. Didn't know about her either. Gosh, it's hard to keep up with all these great podcasts that we can watch. So there are 4 new podcasts for those of you that might be looking for something. I'm not looking at the camera today. My little slip of paper fell down. Sorry. Okay, tips and tricks. I have been watching back episodes of Roxanne Richardson's podcast, RoxKnits, R-O-X. I've talked about her before. She has 53,000 followers. That's how good she is. She does a tip every Tuesday, and she does a podcast every Friday. And I have been going back and watching, and she is just got such a great reminder for some tricks that you know or you forget about, or tips. I am just so tickled to be watching this. So go give that a look. But this time she talks on the episode that is called On the Vintage Sweater Home Stretch at minute 36. There is a talk that she does. She answers some questions, and someone asked her about picking up stitches on like a button band. And so if you had to go and the pattern says pick up 153 stitches and you don't know how to kind of go about that, she does a great explanation. But here's the deal, it like made so much sense to me. If you have 5 stitches per inch and 7 rows per inch, and you've knit 10 inches of knitting, 7 rows times 10, you got about 70 rows of body, right? And then it says to pick up however many stitches. And usually people will say pick up 2 out of 3 stitches or pick up 3 out of 4 stitches. Kind of depending on your gauge, that can make a difference. But if you have 70 rows, but you were getting 5 stitches to the inch, in 10 rows, you need to pick up 50 stitches, right? 5 times 10, 7 times 10. That was such a great moment for me because I know like the ratios and I don't have a huge problem with picking up, but I thought, I bet there are people who haven't done that math before. And so go take a look. She explains it better than I did probably. It's on that podcast. I'll link it in the show notes. You can always pick up a different number than the pattern suggests. If the pattern says to pick up 100 and you get 94, a lot of times that's okay. If the pattern's going to tell you where to place the buttonholes though, then you got to make up those 6 stitches by increasing in that first row of knitting. That can work too. But a lot of times for me, I want the pickup to look better and my gauge isn't spot on to the pattern. So then I just adjust it anyway. And I say, well, this is how many stitches I got picked up. That will look good for my knitting. And then I'll adjust where the buttonholes go, or, you know, use safety pins and figure that out. You don't have to pick up exactly the right number. You can always adjust it. Okay, and then if you do nothing else this week in listening to me, go watch her tip from 2018. And I had seen it back then. And I thought she did a podcast that, like, tech talk. It's like a tip talk that blew my mind back in the day. I was so unaware. And it is called Avoiding Excess Twist as You Knit. And she has pictures of yarn and the way yarn is coming off a skein or a ball after you cake it up. And if it comes off in a clockwise direction, or if it comes off in a counterclockwise direction. And if you're going to pull from the outside of the skein, how pulling from the outside will automatically make things twist. And she uses some ribbon to visually show you how, by winding up your yarn from a hank into a ball, you're putting twist in the yarn. And you need to take that twist out. And she has a visual at the beginning of this yarn that's attached to some knitting, and it's all twisted, like it's rolling back on itself. We have all been there, right? Where the entire time you're knitting something, it's so twisted you have to keep pushing the twist down so you can continue to knit, and it's so frustrating. And then she has one that's not twisted and how she got it to untwist. And she shows you the S twist of the yarn and the Z twist. And so if you've never seen that before, the video is worth it just for that. This is 11 minutes and it is so clear. And I have explained it to people before, and I understand the concept of pulling from the center and how things will twist as you pull from the center. But there are a couple of tips in there, and I shouldn't give them away because they're hers. And they're probably generally known by some, you know, advanced knitters. So some of you will be like, yes, I understood how much twist I'm putting in and how I can take it out and how I can push my tail through to the other side. It's really good. I mean, I watched the whole thing twice. I said, she's just doing such a great job of visually showing why yarn can get so twisted up. And I think some people just think that it just gets so twisted up and not that you're doing it or that you could do something to keep it from happening. So go watch Avoiding Excess Twist as You Knit from Technique Tuesday on May 30th, 2018. I'll link it in the show notes. It is worth every 11 minutes that you give it. I asked you on the last podcast if you would please tag your local yarn store to tell them that I'll give them a free ebook from the Knitwords ebook that's coming out today. If I put this up, then it's live somewhere, and I'm so excited about it and having it be done because it's just such a big project. It isn't as if these are the projects that every knitter in the world wants to knit. This is not Caitlin Hunter and Joji Locatelli and, you know, Marie Green and all the big names, right? This is Corey's 8 pattern ebook that she probably spent too much money and too much time on and has been excited about for too long, and just, you know, happy to have it out into the world. Yeah, kind of like having a baby, right? You're so excited for so long. When it finally happens, it's just, thank heavens it's here. I do have a recipe for you this week. This is a favorite of mine. I probably make stir fry once every 2 weeks. I will take everything that's left over in the fridge vegetable wise, cook some rice, sometimes I'll have leftover rice, and put it in a electric stir fry pan from when I was married. Maybe I've told you guys that before, but I still have the same electric stir fry pan that I got when I got married in 1986. I love it. I love that I can control the heat. It's kind of like an electric fry pan, but it's a wok. And it makes easy work of vegetables and meat for stir fry. So I will make stir-fried rice. I'll put peas and carrots, saute an egg, put a little oil in the pan with some soy sauce and heat it all up, and then I'll put whatever I have vegetable-wise or meat-wise on top. So this is called spicy beef and noodles, but I don't make it spicy. So 1 pound of beef round tip steaks cut to 1/4 inch thick. And you can buy stir-fry meat at your butcher, or you can just cut up meat, and I have also done this with hamburger. When Kylie was little, she always preferred hamburger than real meat. Hamburger can be real meat, but you know what I mean. And you could also make this vegetarian. So then 2 jalapeno peppers minced, and I leave those out, and I wrote on my pattern, due to a Minnesota husband. But if you took the seeds out and you just did 1 and chopped it finely, it wouldn't be too spicy. Then 1 package of 3 ounces of a beef flavored ramen noodle, and I've also used the oriental noodle, but because this is beef, it calls for the beef ramen noodles. 1/4 cup of Lea & Perrin steak sauce, 1 cup of bean sprouts, 1/4 cup of peanuts, 2 tablespoons of cilantro or parsley, and then I add mushrooms. I always add mushrooms because that is a vegetable that my husband will eat, and he is not a fan of onions and peppers. So mushrooms are my go-to. So you toss the beef and the peppers and the mushrooms in the oil. You break the noodles up, kind of crack them, and put reserve the seasoning packet. Cook the noodles in a thing so it's super quick. You know how fast those ramen noodle packages really boil up? And then just stir fry the beef for 60 seconds because you have a searing hot pan. Put the noodles in, the steak sauce, the sprouts, the peanuts, the cilantro, sprinkle with the reserve seasoning, and then mix it all up. So it's the noodles and the beef all together in 1 pot. It's like a 1-pot meal. If you don't have a wok or a electric stir fry pan, you could use an electric pan or just a pan on the stove top. It would work about the same. You'd probably have to maybe be careful not to scorch, use a little more oil depending on what kind of pan you have. But yeah, it's just a really good, quick, easy, spicy beef and noodles. So I would recommend that one. Okay, I have a tiny bit of a Corey stories today to end, and then I'll say goodbye. But I had someone write me a note asking me about my daughter Kylie and law school being online. And they said in the note, I don't know how to spell Kylie's name. And they spelled it K-Y-L-I-E, which, not a big deal. But because it was in a note to me, I thought, oh, well, I'll explain it to her. So I said, when we were pregnant, finally, and all of you know that I have a long road to having an only child, a very long road, many, 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 many years. So much anticipation. We could not settle on a name. We did not know if we were having a boy or a girl, and we had index cards that we put names on. So we had Sam on a card, and we had, I'm not going to go through them all. Anyway, and my husband would eat his Total cereal in the morning for breakfast, and he would go through the cards, and we just really hadn't settled. But with a last name like Eichelberger, you cannot give a child a large first name, right? Like you cannot give her Elizabeth Eichelberger because none of that's ever going to fit on a form going forward. You have a 12-letter last name, E-I-C-H-E-L-B-E-R-G-E-R, and you have to spell that for the rest of your life. You need to have a short first name. So we were really, uncertain. And we had the baby, and we're in the hospital, and no name. And they brought us a birth certificate form to fill out, no name. Next shift of nurses come in, no name. birth certificate form. By the time we were getting ready to leave, we have all these birth certificate forms piled up on this. And you're not in a great, that's not a good time to pick a name when you necessarily, because you're not in a great frame of mind. But we were going to go home the following morning. In the middle of the night, my husband got up and Kylie was in a bassinet in the room. And he picked her up and he said, well, are you ready to go home today, Kylie? And I looked at him and I said, Kylie, is that her name? He said, yeah, Kylie Lynn. My middle name is Lynn. And I said, okay, I'm okay with that, right? I'm getting teared up. But it was just a moment where we had waited so many years for this. And this is not a sad story. I'm sorry. Whew. But the nurse came in to do something, and Ross said, we're going to fill out the paperwork. And so he went over to the little thing, and there are two people in this family, an English teacher good speller and a not English teacher bad speller. And he wrote on the form, Kylie Lynn Eichelberger, K-I-L-E-Y. And I said, that is not how you spell Kylie. And he said, well, that is the only way to spell Kylie. Kylie like Riley. So in his mind, Kylie was like Riley. Kylie was not like Kyle, because that would be similar to a boy's name. So the K-Y-L-I-E, K-Y-L-E-E, all Kaylee, who is my sister-in-law, his brother's wife, K-A-Y-L-E-E, none of those entered his mind in that moment. And I thought to myself, I can either argue about this, the man who didn't learn phonics in the school that he went to when he was little, and he's always struggled with sounding things out, and he is 4 times smarter than I am, but he does not spell easily, and I am not nearly as smart as he is. I can spell words that I've never seen before. I don't know what that is, if that comes as you grow up, or he's always said, well, we didn't learn phonics. My mom said we didn't have phonics. They had switched to sight words when he was in elementary school, and so he never learned how to sound things out. And so he said, I just don't know the sounds that they teach other kids. He said, I can certainly adapt now and I can look everything up. But anyway, Corey's stories always tend to be a little longer. We spell Kylie like Riley. K-I-L-E-Y. There you go. For the person who asked, that is how we spell it, because that's how Dad thought it should be. And she kind of likes it, but it's spelled wrong by everyone, because most people go Kylie like Kyle. Thanks so much for watching this week. I'm so excited about this ebook. I hope that you like it. I hope some of you are smiling when you look at this poncho and you're just saying, it does celebrate a knitter, Corey. I would never wear it, but it celebrates the knitter. And can you imagine wearing that out in public and having a muggle walk by? They'll never get it. It's like, Leviosa in Harry Potter, right? If you know, you know. If you don't know, you don't know. I mean, I think the knit and the purl, but the rest of the abbreviations, and I have, I don't even know, 30 or 40 charts in the book of all the words that you can possibly think of. So I'm so glad this thing is done and over, and I can send it out into the world and give some knitters some fun, something to laugh about. Read the stories, tell your friends, buy the book, buy the ebook, get the discount, send it to a friend, gift it on Ravelry to someone, tell your local yarn store, whatever you can do to help me, so my husband can say, did you break even? And I can say, yes, I did. Because, boy, it's been a lot of time and energy. And anyway, I'll quit blathering on. I tend to blather a bit. That's why you're all still sticking around at the end of this. I'm not saying hello this week because I have recorded this back to back with episode 53. I have not had my hand surgery in this video, but I will have had it when this goes live. So it's going to be one of those weird time continuum things. But until next time, keep it colorful, keep your fork, hang in there, people. Say a prayer for me. Love you all. Bye.